It seems there's a new hypercar launched every 5 minutes these days, usually promising extreme downforce and some sort of sci-fi tech. Well, today we're going to witness the birth of a brand new hypercar company, but one inspired by F40 and GT40, JDM heroes, Gilles Villeneuve and Jean Alesi, the Lamborghini Countach, basically all of the good stuff. Oh, and it has a 6.5 litre naturally aspirated V12 engine, a manual gearbox. Under here is the new NILU 27.
Let me get this right. The new marque is NILU 27 and its first car is this, simply the NILU. The name is a portmanteau of the children's names of founders Sasha and Ina, and the 27 is a reference to Gilles Villeneuve. As a kid growing up in the former Soviet Union, Sasha had just one picture to spark his passion. It was of Gilles fully lit in a Ferrari F1 car. Sasha's career is remarkable, designer of Huracán, Chiron, Koenigsegg Gemera and CC850 amongst others. His pedigree is impeccable. Plus, the car's spec is mouth-watering. 6.5 litre normally aspirated V12 with 1,070 horsepower, 7-speed manual gearbox, circa 1,200 kilos, and so much attitude it hurts. So let's meet the man and the creation.
So this car has all the right ingredients and I think it looks fantastic too, but I want to talk about the concept, the high-level inspiration for this car. So I'm joined by Sasha, who's going to run through where this thing's come from, obviously from his brain, but what was the process to get here? So thanks for spending some time with us. Just give us the lowdown on where you've come from and what you want to achieve with this car.
Well, first of all, great having you guys here, so thank you very much. It's a dream come true. It's really hard to put into words what this car means to me. I've been working on it for the last 15, 20 years. Yeah. My entire time in the car industry, basically, this was in the back of my mind. I started off designing for car companies. I had a job at VW Group, which ended up with me joining Lamborghini for the Huracán project. I was responsible for exterior design at Bugatti during the times of the Chiron and Vision Gran Turismo. Those were my exteriors. Koenigsegg was another big chapter of my life, Gemera and CC850. But all along, this car was in the back of my mind. And to have an opportunity to start my own car company and to design a car from my vision and my dream is just an incredible, just lifelong dream come true.
Okay, so you've got an incredible pedigree in the hypercar space. You have to have some unique qualities. So how would you sum up what you wanted to achieve?
Well, so I had this feeling kind of growing in me for all these years that the hypercar world and sports car industry in general was slightly veering off course. That adding more technology while the cars were getting faster and faster and faster wasn't necessarily adding more emotion and wasn't necessarily speaking to the petrol head in me. So things like seamless shifting or driver assists or electrification, digitalization, over-the-air updates, connectivity with your devices, all these things that we're used to in everyday life and in modern cars, they kind of detract from the essential experience, sports car experience. And every single time I had a chance to go, both as a driver, as a passenger, and I don't know, even something as simple as a Exige, a club sport Exige with semi-slicks and straight cut gears, and the level of joy that I would experience from those cars was just on a different planet, even compared to a most refined modern hypercar. These bare bones, simple, borderline racing machines were always what captivated me. So this car was meant to be the most puristic expression of my feelings and my love towards sports cars and hypercars. And I think there's a sentiment already now growing that technology has kind of forced the industry off track a little bit. And there's a few people doing an amazing job with that same sentiment. What also sets us apart is what I call the whole factor. It's a very important part of the story that we're trying to tell here. The car needs to be poster worthy. It needs to kind of capture your imagination, and every one of your senses needs to be rewarded with the experience.
Okay, so it's about purity of driving experience, but with that brutal, visceral excitement that you get when you look at like a Lamborghini Countach or a GT40. Okay, well that sounds like a pretty good place to start. We're going to now look at this car in detail in all the various places that make it really special and really different.
Sasha's ambition is breathtaking and can be summed up as trying to create a car with the feedback connection and purity of something like a GMA T50, combined with the shock and awe of a Countach when it was launched back in the day, or an F40 on the lock stops.
So how do you go about creating that raw, emotional driving experience that we all romanticize over and love to imagine? Well, basically by not trying to reinvent the wheel in some spaces, but getting something really extreme in others. So effectively this car, under the skin, carbon fiber tub, aluminium subframes front and rear for the suspension, which are double wishbone, push rod operated dampers. So everything's sort of like race car best practice, if you like, but nothing too crazy. We've got gull wing doors on this car. These are safety pins, if you're wondering. If there's an accident, you can just stick a screwdriver or anything strong and metal through there and it breaks the hinges and allows you to get out. But yeah, like I say, everything is sort of as you'd expect, but nothing too over the top. Come to the wheels and brakes. They look quite flat and simple, don't they? But if you look behind the spokes, they're all drilled out for lightweight. Brembo is going to be a technical partner for these carbon ceramic brakes. There will be ABS and there'll be a traction control system, but it will be quite simple. I don't think it's going to be a dial where you go between modes. It's effectively going to be on or off. There's a lot of power. There's no turbocharger, so you should have a lovely linear delivery. But even so, I think this car is going to be a handful. Let's put it that way. And that's really the whole point of it. Of course, the heart and soul of the car is this 6.5 litre V12 engine. It's supplied by Hartley Engines, New Zealand company, run by Nelson Hartley, who's the brother of Brendan Hartley, World Endurance Championship driver and former F1 driver too. So let's talk about this thing. The basic numbers, 1,070 horsepower at 11,000 RPM, 630 foot-pounds torque, about 7,000 RPM. Basically, Hartley have been wanting to build their own engine. They're a specialist. They do a lot of race engines. They've built a Toyota V12 high-spec engine, but they wanted to create something bespoke, and that is this. So it's bespoke block, completely bespoke project, big bore, short stroke. They describe it as a monster, and they're very, very excited about it. NILU 27 became the perfect technical partner, effectively. They wanted to create the engine, and they found the perfect home for it in this car. A lot of talk about the hot V configuration, they call it. So not turbocharged, normally aspirated, but the exhaust is on the inside of the engine. So intake on the outside, exhaust coming through into the V. This is an 80-degree V12 engine inspired by 1980s and 1990s F1 engines. So they wanted to create something highly charged, basically. Emotion, excitement. The quote I read was they wanted to be a little bit crazy. Well, 1,070 horsepower at 11,000 RPM should do the trick. The car is going to weigh somewhere in the 1,200 kilo range, so power to weight is going to be fantastic. But yeah, 7-speed manual Cima gearbox. Cima used to supply Pagani in the Zonda days and Koenigsegg as well with a 6-speed manual. This is a new 7-speed manual. So no great revolution in some respects, but it's got everything you want. Lightweight, stiff carbon tub, push rod operated suspension, double wishbones, all the right stuff, and then this whacking great, naturally aspirated 6.5 litre V12 that revs beyond where you would imagine it could. So I think a fantastic recipe for an aggressive and nutty car. I mean, what else do you want?
Perhaps one genuine disappointment is that the NILU will be limited to just 15 examples, and this first car will not be homologated for road use. However, there are plans for a road version. This first car costs around $3.7 million, with the road car limited to 54 units, coming in at more like $2.8 million. The first cars will be built by the Aria Group in Irvine, California, but there are plans for a production facility. So it's big money, but there's much to be excited about here, including on the inside.
I'm trying to be cynical about this car because it basically pays to be cynical about new hypercars. They come and go so quick, but I really dig this thing, and the interior is just another example of the functionality, about how they get that stripping back all the extra superfluous stuff actually should increase the pleasure of the driving experience. Very simple in here, fixed seats, quite reclined. They're going to put an adjustable backrest in so you can change that position, but the pedals and the dash move with the steering wheel, so that's all adjustable. This lovely gated shifter is raised up a bit, just like old race cars used to have, like their gear stick on almost like a pedestal. The steering wheel is 350mm.
in diameter. It's modelled on John Lacey's F1 car actually, so that's nice little small steering wheel, but it means the dials have to be outside of the diameter of the steering wheel. Nice, big, clear, simple, no screens. We've got a digital rear view mirror, and that's basically it. There's no infotainment. There is Bluetooth speakers. There's one here, and then they're here on the seats. But basically, it feels special because everything's functional and the view out is fantastic. All of this cross bracing is a real part of the chassis. And then when you're in it, there's this classic race car vibe to the whole thing with the heavily curved windscreen. Feels like you should be driving down the Mulsanne Straight, basically, with a V12 engine screaming away behind you, which is effectively what you're going to get with this car. So I'm just really into the execution and the concept of this car. And there's some fancy touches. The carbon fiber tub is actually pre-preg, but then they've dressed it with this sort of forged carbon look. There's vegan leather in this car with this unique fade on it. So there's nice touches, there's lovely design, the dials are fantastic, but fundamentally, it feels like a focused driving environment with inspiration from the past, but just remixed into this really contemporary, almost futuristic feel. So yeah, my cynicism is bleeding away with every second I spend with this car. The interior's simplicity and focus is really quite something. This wasn't Sasha's work, but his business partner's, Etienne Salome. He happens to have styled the Chiron interior too. There is so much high quality experience in this car. Now let's take a closer look at the overall design with Sasha himself.
We've looked at some of the engineering behind this car, but obviously Sasha has an amazing pedigree on Huracán, Chiron, Koenigseggs. So let's talk about the design with the man himself. Sasha, I love this car, and it references a lot of different things, but it still feels like a cohesive, homogeneous design. So why don't you just walk us through what you've done and how we've arrived at this car?
Well, I think you kind of just did my job for me, because that was actually the idea. I really wanted a strong sense of deja vu, right? When you see the car that you feel like it's someone you've known your entire life, for some reason lost track of that person, and you reconnect. But in this case, this didn't actually exist before. So this is the trickery that I wanted to play on your mind, that you feel almost intimately acquainted with it prior to even seeing it, right? A lot of familiar design elements were used, a lot of, let's say, historic nods to other cars that I grew up loving as a child, and as a professional, kind of admiring even more. Not a big fan talking about design features, because I think design ideally should speak for itself, but I do want to highlight a couple of things that I find special, or some things that I'm quite proud of when it comes to what we achieved here.
Okay, yeah, do it. Take us through front to back and let us know whatever you think are the most key elements.
So obviously the whole kind of exercise of designing a fast car, a sports car, a hypercar is about designing to function. Function is primary. Everything else needs to come as a way to celebrate and as a way to illustrate that function. So we have needs for cooling, we have needs for aerodynamic stability, we have needs for low drag coefficient, and all the design features here serve a purpose. There's nothing superfluous, there's no styling lines that I just find attractive or fancy. They're all done for a good reason. For example, the front of the car, obviously the main feature are these air intakes in the front and the radiators that they serve. But the whole surfacing of the front, if you look at it, it's very full, voluptuous, and sculptural, like a lot of three-dimensionally curved surfaces on the front. But as we get towards the side, they get a lot flatter. The cabin is something I'm very proud of. It took a long time to finesse it, because obviously occupant comfort, ergonomics, headroom, getting in and out of the car, safety. The cabin is really where all these different paths and roads meet. And to nail the cabin is the most challenging, but also the most rewarding part of designing a car. If you got the cabin right, the rest just falls into place almost effortlessly. On the interior, also had a lot of help from a good friend of mine, Etienne Salome, who was ex-head of interiors at Bugatti when I was heading up exteriors. So we were the Chiron team back then, and this is our kind of exterior-interior rematch, so to speak.
It's interesting that this is almost the opposite concept to the Chiron, but you guys have both come from there.
So that's a funny story too, because when I was working on the Chiron, I already had drawings of this car in mind, and I did show them around, and some of the features did kind of bleed over into that project. But this is the most puristic expression of that idea. As I said earlier, it did really take almost 20 years to go from having a thought to realizing it here in the flesh.
Okay, so we've got this lovely, elegant glass canopy, I guess, here. And then, yeah, take us down the side of the car. The only design cue that immediately did bring to mind one car was the Naka duct on the side.
That's interesting. Countach, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Countach is our holy donor car. Countach in Piedmontese actually means something like holy. So that was definitely part of our book of inspirations. But this snack adduct wasn't on the car until very recently. This was actually a very late addition in the game. We are going with a hot V engine, so the intakes are down low.
Yeah.
And I was struggling to find a location for a meaningful intake for the engine. Moving around the car, thinking, how can I duct to the engine from this location to that location? And then simplest thought came to mind. Why don't we just go straight out of the engine directly on the same height as the intakes are and see where we end up on the body side? And we ended up right here where the NACA sits. And of course there were questions of what that intake should look like. Should it be another, curved theme like the upper one? I thought, well, no, it should just be this super iconic nod to my childhood anyway, to when these things were what I had on my bedroom wall. And I can't imagine the car without it anymore. It just somehow landed so well on that panel in that location.
It is, it's gorgeous, I love it. Okay, and I want to talk about the back of the car because, well, it's incredible.
It's really the centerpiece. It's like every house needs a fireplace. This is in a way, our jewel, our fireplace. I'm not much of a watch guy, not even wearing a watch, but what happened in the watch industry when more precise timekeeping was possible with quartz watches and now smart watches, and the traditional watch industry was kind of facing a dilemma how to continue, and they, instead of trying to catch up with precision standards that quartz watches were setting, they just said, you know what, screw it, we're just going to celebrate the artistry of making a watch and we're going to show it off. And this is what we're doing here as well. We're saying, yeah, you're probably never going to get the same traction as an electric car does, but you get this instead, the heart and soul, the beauty, right? And it's fully exposed. And it makes all kinds of sense too, because heat can escape effortlessly, because there's really no need to cover it for weather purposes. Actually, most of the supercars and hypercars, they have an open engine bay. It just looks closed, but it's not sealed. There's plenty of ventilation. So we just decided to remove whatever was left of those covers and celebrate that we have this stunning, bespoke developed for this car, 80 degree, 6.5 liter, 1,070 horsepower, 12-cylinder engine. This is unlike any other car and deserves to live out in the open.
Okay, so artistry and functionality are basically what this car is all about, and those subtle references to some really iconic cars, but somehow all brought together into one cohesive shape. So thank you for talking us around it. All I think when I look at it is it looks great, and I guess that's the idea.
That means a lot, yeah. You've seen a lot of cars in your career, so it means a lot coming from you. Thank you very much.
Super cool.
Well, what a thing. I came in cynical and left really impressed. The mix of purity and a kind of Can-Am fear factor deeply appeals. NILU 27 is fully self-funded by Sasha and Ina up to now, a pure passion project, and it shows. Now they need partners to bring this vision to production.
These studio preview days are always frustrating. Cars are meant for driving. I mean, just ask these guys. But today, even more so. The NILU 27 is a cool project. It comes from the right place and it speaks to all the things I love about cars and driving. There's still a long way to go before this thing comes fully to life, but I really hope they make it. I just want to be in here, driving with that V12 engine singing away at 11,000 RPM.